So I think the advantages of having a small group is that we can have a real conversation, right? And everyone's probably somewhere different in their Proposition E journey, right? Super happy that Denise has agreed to be a part of our circle.
Yay.
Yay. And my co-Proposition E co-captain, Vinay. My name is Joe Landini. I'm the founder of Safe House Arts and also one of the stewards with ABBA, which is Arts for a Better Bay Area. We're one of the organizations that helped steer Proposition S and then Proposition E. And there's a lot of questions around that. And now I'm going to invite Vinay to introduce himself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I know most of you, so it's kind of odd. My name is Vinay Patel, and I am the executive director of the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Center. I also work with Bindlestiff Studios and Asian Improv Arts. And I've been doing arts administration and advocacy for over now 20 years. And at a time, I was the really, really young guy. And now
12.
I'm that really, really old guy.
He was 12.
I was 12 then, yes. And then to my left, you can't believe how ecstatic I am having Denise here, to sit in with us. When I thought there is no, a person from any of these departments willing to come up here and sit, and she's like, I'll come. I'm like, wow. So Denise, I'll let you introduce yourself from the Arts Commission.
Okay, I'm Denise Pate. I'm the Director of Community Investments for the San Francisco Arts Commission. It's a long title that means I just manage all the people that manage the grants program. So, and I'm also, it's just been a year and a half since I've been at the commission. And so I'm learning a lot about property too. So that before you guys can fill in the history and all that. And we're administering the funds and getting ready to reevaluate how they were used and what happened. And I understand there was some controversy and things like that.
Oh yeah, we're going to whip it out.
Controversy.
We're going to whip it out.
And I missed it because by the time I came, it was all calmed down. So I thought, thank you.
And we're a small group. So would you guys come in. I think we should pass the mic around and everyone introduce themselves. Zach, such a handsome man.
Oh, geez, knock that off. So I'm Zachary. Hi, I'm Zachary. I am with ODC and Oomph Dance Theater, and I'm going to pass the mic. Pronouns they, he.
Hey everyone, my name is, ooh, that's hot. I'm going to hold it back a little bit. Sorry. Hi, my name is Vin Seaman. I use they, them pronouns. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and the director of Diamond Wave. We're a queer arts organization. And I was also a community organizer for the Yes on E campaign in 2018. Oh, God, that was a while ago.
I'm just an individual artist, and I did help a little bit with probably back then. So I just want to find out what's up.
So just bring some chairs in.
Why don't you guys? We got some chairs over here.
My name is Ruth Mankin, and I am an arts education consultant, and I bring artists into the schools to teach music, dance, theater, visual arts, circus arts, poetry. So I'm here to meet everybody and to learn more. I know this isn't about arts education so much, it's about the arts, but that's why I'm here, to kind of connect with people. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you. And absent the prompts, I'll just dive in. My name is Deanna Griffin. I'm a 35-year arts and culture worker in collecting art museums. And I'm interested in being here, thinking for myself about what new adventures can I undertake in my working world.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jaime Cortez. I'm a program officer at the Hewlett Foundation and also a writer and visual artist. And I apologize in advance that I won't be able to stay to the end of this session, but I will be glad for whatever information I can get. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Tucker. My pronouns are she, her, and I work with SF Travel. I'm the arts person. So I'm sort of trying to make sure that there is a lot of hotel funds going to the right place. Or
So it's official. SF Travel still has an arts person.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
almost 5 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yi Zong, he, him. I'm a project manager with CAS, Community Arts Stabilization Trust. So I work with Josh, who just spoke. I actually have no idea what Prop E is, so I'm going to figure out.
Oh, a virgin. Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lawrence Cole. I'm the music director of the Pacific Chamber Orchestra. And in addition to concerts, we have an extensive education program and also a program called Dream American for emerging young composers to write new works.
Hey guys, we're just introducing ourselves real quick. Just say hi.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. I'm Jason Bayani. I'm the co-director at Curtain Street Workshop.
And
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Matalioti, and I am the Program and Membership Manager for Artspan and SF Open Studios.
Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Joyce Grimm, and I built the first Art in Storefronts project here for the San Francisco Arts Commission. I used to work at the Arts Commission Gallery, and I had a gallery myself called Triple Bass for years. Maybe some people know that. It seems like forever ago. But the last couple of years, I've been working with artists using technology, sponsored by Adobe. And I've been teaching technology folks what art is all about. Asking questions and really like honing in on what we see as significant in the world. So.
Hello, I'm Amy Burke. What haven't I been doing? I'm teaching. I was at SFAI. RIP. I run City Studio, which was RIP, but we're bringing it back. It's bringing art to underserved teens and tweens. I'm at the Academy High School doing an industrial design program. I run a program called Artivate, bringing art into neighborhoods and communities, looking at working with neighborhoods and communities and making these conceptual art pieces. But I'll keep it at that. All right.
when do you sleep?
Yeah, I don't.
All right. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Okay, so Vinay and I have planned like a little tutorial on introduction to Proposition E.
Yes.
So we're going to do this as sort of a dialogue, right?
Yeah, we're going to do it as a dialogue. I think one of the things that we want, hopefully everyone takes away from, the dialogue we're going to be having is that, the opportunities that you see around you, whether or not they're small or you think they're large, whatever, in terms of, public support for the arts, that in San Francisco has always been, started by the idea was from the community. And from the community, I mean, people in this room, there are people in this room that made these it possible that there's money that, from the government going to the arts. And so this is a little bit of a story dialogue because, Joe and I were both involved in it. Kevin was heavily involved in it, trying to get, more public support for the arts, And so part of this, a little bit of a history, but also at the end of it, we want you to feel empowered. These are your dollars, these are promises made to you, and therefore you should feel empowered to speak up, about it. So in the end, hopefully, that's where we end up.
Right. In the beginning, there was, guys, everyone knows what Grants for the Arts is for the most part. Yeah, everyone's pretty clear on that. So in the beginning, Grants for the Arts was attached to the hotel tax fund, which meant that a percentage of the hotel tax went directly into grants that were made by Grants for the Arts.
Grants for the Arts. Well, there was a fund, and there was either it was by a vote to the public, or it was in the charter or something on how the hotel tax was supposed to be spent. And so it was very specific, right? And so fast forward, and that what happened over the years was that the Board of Supervisors, through just a regular ordinance where they vote, in their chambers every year, say, you know what, we're going to reallocate some of these dollars and spend it this way and spend it this way. And so that hotel tax ended up starting to fund lots of different things, but, and including programs over at the Arts Commission. And that included, cultural centers, and they included cultural equity grants and things like that over at the Arts Commission too. But in 2004, there was a lawsuit, and that lawsuit, was about parking meter fees, of all things. But that had a wide impact, and the city started going, wait a second, and then what the judgment was that if you went to the voters and said you're going to spend tax dollars this way, you have to spend tax dollars only that way. And so because the city was actually, and I think we're past the statute of limitations, so we can talk about this. But because the city was actually over ordinance, just changing all those allocations, they started saying we can't. So they pulled all those dollars from the Arts Commission and grants for the arts out, and put them in general fund. And that's almost death sentence. If you're in general fund, that means like wherever the wind blows that year in terms of the budget, you're susceptible to it. Under the as you know, this year, right? And under one of the things under the hotel tax, there was a provision of, no matter what happens in the city budget, you cannot go 10% lower from the previous year, and you can't go 10% higher than the previous year of your allocation. So there was a floor and ceiling that always protected us in the arts. But when after 2004 or 6 or something like that, they pulled us out, we did not have those safeguards anymore. That means that everybody was kind of every year had to go and fight to make sure that there's enough money in those two departments,
So at that point, you had a bunch of stressed out artists. Okay, everyone's up to speed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving forward. We move on to the year 2018.
Yes.
We've gone through the banking recession of 2008.
The dot-com burst.
2010?
Yeah.
So artists are really stressed out. Okay, so we get to 2017, and we start organizing Proposition S. 2016.
Yeah.
Proposition S, which Vin was one of the spearheaders. And we failed miserably.
No, we didn't.
My version is so much more interesting.
Your version is always darker than what they are. Vin, you want to talk?
Okay, the real version.
Is there another? Oh, there we go.
Right. Vin will tell you the truth. My. Hello.
Thank you. So in 2016, the Arts Alliance, with support from a huge coalition of other organizations, created a Prop S, which was in line with a coalition on homelessness. It was taking these issues of arts and homelessness, putting them together as two core issues for our city. And that legislation, I think, missed passing by like 3%, 4%, something like that. Needed two-thirds to pass. That's not damn my short blade. There was other bigger failures on that election cycle in 2016.
Yeah, that wasn't the biggest gut punch that night.
But also, I think from that legislation as well, that legislation took a big portion of the hotel tax fund in a way that worried city administrators and other agencies that also drew upon that fund. So in 2017, Prop S 2.0 happened, which was the same coalition. And that just, it fizzled out. It didn't work. It didn't happen. 2018, we came back with Prop E, which was really a city-led effort from my understanding. It was folks met with city officials, said, hey, we want you to lead this proposition. We want this to be in line with what you think arts funding should be. We don't want to ask for more than our fair share. So it was a lot less than Prop S, but it was still a huge windfall for San Francisco arts, and specifically because it reconnected that hotel tax fund directly with arts funding. So, nobody knew the pandemic would happen. So it's like short of like an earthquake, we would just continue to grow and grow and grow. Nobody knew this other thing would be coming. How's that for a little cat?
That is great. And, one of the things that was the catalyst for, Arts Group to get together, and Arts Alliance, at the time was a collection of the largest budgeted arts organizations in San Francisco. So they had quite a bit of,
the Arts Alliance, the entity that still exists and does lobbying and has a lobbyist within the city.
So they came to, and now that everyone's in the general fund, we're all kind of in the same boat. And that actually, people got together from both sides because, the smaller cultural organizations were kind of at odds with City Hall being in between, of the interests of the larger organizations and the smaller ones and the individual artists. But we saw an opportunity to work together to try to bring this back. And we worked really hard to come up with equitable plans. Like, it was not going to be business as usual if we were to come back and put the money back into this. So a lot of community members got together. We had a lot of discussions and meetings and dialogues and fights about, what it's going to look like, and it can't be the way that it was. If we're going to do it, we got to do something that we feel was going to have a more lasting impact, than, where we had been. So that was a very interesting time. We've never sat together. I've never sat in the offices of the San Francisco Symphony and things like that. So, but again, that was community-led effort, and Prop S didn't have City Hall support, but we still got 63%. But when we came back for Prop E, City Hall came to us and said, look, if you work with us on the language, we will sponsor it and save you some effort. And because they knew that we were stronger, Prop E time around, we were stronger then. And so we had decided it was going to be a smaller chunk that we're going to take, but we were going to have City Hall support behind it.
All right. So that leads us to so at this point, Proposition E has passed, and that spawned the birth of the
Cultural Services Allocation Plan.
Thank you. Or the what's the short term we call it?
Arts Impact Endowment. But one thing that Prop E has, so everyone just kind of knows what it actually funds. So Prop E funds all of Grants for the Arts. Their whole budget is within Grants for the Arts. In Arts Commission, they have a mixed funding over there, and Denise can talk a little bit more about it too. But from whatever, but what comes out of Prop E are, it funds cultural equity grants, it funds cultural centers, and it funds the Arts Impact Endowment or the Cultural Services Plan. I forget the full name of that one. CESP or
Cultural Services Allocation Plan, or CSAP.
Yeah, CSAP.
I talked about this stuff on the campaign trail for months, so this is why it's all burned and etched.
So that's
into
why
my
he's
memory.
upset that I can't remember.
Also, Vinay, for cultural districts that are funded through the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, I believe, as well.
No, Mayor's Office of Community Development.
Thank you. Mayor's Office of Community Development supports a pool of funding for all of the different cultural districts throughout the city as well.
Okay, so let's take a deep breath. That was a lot of information. So, and some of you are probably asleep. So let's get the mic. Let's get the mic.
Oh yeah, we have to talk into the mics
because we're recording the whole thing.
I'd like to know what percentage of the hotel tax, which is 14%, hotel tax is 14%, goes to Grants for the Arts. I'm sorry. I just, that brass tack.
That's a good question. Does anyone know? So we may have to get back to you on that one. So
let's see. I don't think I have a percentage of it. And the percentage is, what I do know is when Grants for the Arts was put back into the hotel tax, and that percentage varies depending how large the hotel tax is, the larger the tax, the percentage is different. But what we had done at the time was try to set a baseline. What the city asked, give us what your baseline is. And so, a lot of creative accounting tried to make that baseline as big as possible. So I'll tell you that when Grants for the Arts was put back into the hotel tax through Prop E, it was $16.3 million that was put back in, which was a bump, to what they had.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Where do you want to go next, Vinay? That's all I got.
That's all you got. Well, a lot of the things. Well, actually, someone had a question. Yeah.
So something I'm kind of hearing from you, Vin, is that there's a lack of transparency right now with the hotel tax fund and what's going, like, what is the percentage? What are these brass tacks things? And I'm just wondering, does anybody here, and it can be our wonderful panelists or anybody else know, or, especially with grants for the arts, they've had a complete changeover of staff in the last 2 years. And what they used to have are these docket meetings where the community was allowed in to get to see decisions and get to see the advisory group make those decisions in real time around who was being funded and why. I loved those docket meetings. I went to every one, even virtually, because the things that people would talk about were fascinating. And I was also incredibly worried that that the organizations I represented would be cut out, which was never really an issue. That was just my anxiety speaking. And so when our new team came in, those docket meetings were completely taken away. It was replaced with one last year, but all the decisions had been made, and it was essentially a congratulatory meeting saying, oh my gosh, we did all the work. Isn't that fabulous? And it was on Zoom, and it was presented in such a way where you couldn't even see the other. I used to be able to go to a meeting and see folks from La Peña or from Hope Moore or from anybody in the room. And afterwards we would step outside and we would have a conversation of like, how are you doing? Like, that conversation was intense, but we couldn't even see who was there. And so I'm raising this, not if anybody knows of any transparency, such as a final, like an annual report or a breakdown of grantees. Like, it's just, I'm sensing a lack of transparency, and that's troubling. And I just want to raise that. And if anybody has any information.
Well, that's a really good segue.
Well, yeah, just to be the professor here again about this stuff, just one more point, and then I think that we're going to go the rest of the time talking about, what's happened, what's going on, and Denise can talk about, the programs of the Arts Commission as well. But one of the things that what happened right after we hit the pandemic immediately, right? Like, we're all celebrating and everything's gonna be great. The tourism was on a sky high. We were gonna see a 10% bump every year, right? And that was gonna be fantastic. We were on cloud nine, right? But the pandemic hit, and we had written in a 10% floor and ceiling, and it was done by the city attorney. We thought it was ironclad, and then all of a sudden we hear, oh, there's no such thing as a floor. There's no money. There's no money. And basically we're right back at the general fund again. That's pretty much what it was, And so we had to go back in there and start advocating, right? And so a lot of people were advocating again, like, hey, this cannot be what's going on here. And we have a mayor that's, comes from the arts, understood that. And so what City Hall ended up doing was what they call backfill. They found other money and they filled it. So what that wasn't doing, what that didn't do was fulfill the promise of the 10% floor. It just said, hey, we're just going to come and try to salvage what's going on over here, right? So that, ever since the pandemic, we have not had enough funds in the hotel tax. And is that how you understand it too, Denise? No? Okay. But City Hall and the supervisors have been backfilling to make sure that we don't, have that. And so, and we actually saw a bump, I think, last year. The mayor was able to put a bump into it. So we didn't, in the arts, I think the first year there was a slight decrease in the funding for the arts, but since then the supervisors have been backfilling it. And in this year, they said that the hotel tax is going to be level in terms of, and then there might not be need for backfilling. There's enough funds in the hotel tax for it. So Denise.
Well, in terms of the hotel tax, I don't know what's going on at Chance for the Arts. I do. We work a little bit with them in their transition. I worked with them on their guidelines, and we worked with figuring out a scenario, kind of like the same. Actually, Jason, who was there before, actually started that kind of like the Robin Hood kind of scenario. Took from the larger organizations so that the smaller organizations could have an entry point, like the $10,000 grants. And so we worked on it, but the challenge was I'm the Arts Commission person. We have the cultural equity, we have this transparency, and then the Grants for the Arts, which is a different organization. So I helped them to write guidelines, and then also we hired a program officer to help them work on reviewing the grants. And right now I'm reading grants for the arts, a small portion of them. And what we're doing is we're helping to advise them on creating a rubric that focuses more on community engagement. And so it's a strange marriage. And it's because it's still grants for the arts. It's the symphony, the opera, the ballet, and then also some smaller organizations. Whereas we're this like really groovy, cultural equity, and we're looking at inclusion all the time, and we're transparent. And so when you were talking about that there was no meeting, we couldn't see what was going on, that totally bypassed me because I was focusing on Arts Commission and all our stuff that's almost too transparent. I mean, it's like it's so transparent where people are always like calling me and saying, this panelist said this and it hurt my feelings, and that was not fair. So anyway, but in terms of like the hotel tax fund, what okay, but what I was told with budget this time, that the Arts Commission, we're in good shape. And I was told that the hotel tax was the only tax that's growing, despite all the talk about that, the tourists are scared away, and that the fund, and I looked at each year and the growth that's happening. And so we're good and we have an increase. But of course we have multiple funds that's coming to the Arts Commission, but Prop E is good. And we have money left over last year. And so that will, move forward to the next year. And I'll just say this, you didn't ask, but in the CSAP process, I happen to have been there, part of the steering committee or whatever you call that committee, where we all got together and talked about the buckets of money, like arts ed, capital and space, core support, and individual artists. And the team decided like what percentage of Prop E would go towards those types of program needs. And for this year, we did the AE, Arts Impact Endowment, and we did a first-time grantee initiative. Now, I knew about the other ones the years before and the controversy around that, but this time we just focused on first-time grantees, which we had a time because it's like, what is a first-time grantee? Can you appear if you were with the organization, can you appear as an individual now, even though you got a grant as the leader of an organization?
No, they wouldn't let me.
And there were all kinds of things going on. But what we found is the CSAP plan said that only a small percentage would go to individual artists. But that was the largest amount of applications that we got. And we still had to say we gave like 4 individual artists. And then the largest was the arts education, and we hardly got any applications in that category. So we had money left over. And we were like, can we just reallocate it? And it was like, no, that was CSAP. The CSAP said that, these are the buckets. And so we had to follow the CSAP. So that's why we had money left over in some categories. So as we get ready we submitted the RFP. We posted the RFP for the consultant that will do the evaluation of this last 5 years.
5 years.
And then we go plan for the next CSAP process. I'm wondering, I'm concerned about what comes up because what the actual need was different from what we saw in the CSAP.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay. So we're at 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's built in that there has to be an evaluation at 5 years. The Arts Commission is hiring an outside consultant to do the evaluation. They're going to get paid a range of 60 to 90? something like that.
90.
90. So you should apply for it.
Not to exceed 90.
Exceed 90.
Oh, wait, it was 50 at first and nobody applied. And so we had to post it again. And we went up. I had to go get more money and we went back up. So this, anyway.
But Zach, circling back to your question, I think you bring up a really important point, which there has been a real struggle with transparency. And it has felt sometimes city government hasn't heard us when we've asked for more transparency. So I think that ABBA is an advocacy organization, and that's why we're all here. We're supposed to be doing advocacy. So these kinds of questions are really important because we can gather these questions and look at them and present them to Ralph and Valley and say, this is what your constituents are asking for, right? Okay, so let's do some questions because that was a lot of information. Lawrence.
So I'm curious what constitutes the definition for arts education. So I'm wondering if the definition is broad enough to have enough applicants, or maybe it's too narrow. So I don't know. I'm asking. So what constitutes arts education that would be applicable?
Learning. Let's see. I'm not the arts ed person, program officer, but I thought that people ask the question all the time, could it be adults also? Are you just talking about children? I have an arts ed program officer that went out because we have other arts ed grants. And you asked if they were interested in the funding. They weren't interested in that funding. Also, sometimes a grant program, we think it's great. It's that it's put together really well and it serves the needs. And then we don't get enough applications in. And you asked a very good question, because there has been a time when something came out and we said, we thought it was good. And they said, that's too much work for that size grant. It doesn't make sense. We don't do that anymore. And so we had to reevaluate. And so, which is what we will do this next time.
The reason I ask this is because some organizations, some funders make a distinction between arts exposure, like doing assemblies for elementary schools, and hands-on education. And I think that's maybe where I don't know if that's
We
covered
told
in
people
that.
to self-identify. They decided that this was arts and that fit in this category. We decided not to pick and choose like that. So people self-identified, this is an arts education program. I mean, it couldn't be like something totally outside of that, but we had a lot of leeway in that.
Okay.
I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but a quick question. I know, does ODC or Dance Mission apply for that funding?
I think the majority of arts education money comes out of DCYF.
Can you repeat that?
The majority of arts education money in the city comes out of DCYF and Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families. They're getting ready. There's another year inside of this trajectory. It was a 5-year grant, and they'll be doing an RFP in October. So, and those grants are actually very hefty and kind of support the basis of your program. So if you can get one of those, you're in the money.
Prop 28 money that got voted in. And so now all the public schools are getting money for the arts. And so that's coming up in August, September. And so 80% of it's going to artists into the schools, or into the not artists, but schools. And then 20% is going for materials and all that stuff. So people are very excited and kind of waiting with bated breath.
Joe, just so I understand your question, are you asking if ODC goes out for SFAC funding?
For children's program, for education.
We haven't gone out for education. We've been kind of, we've been challenged in the last few years of going out for funding with SFAC.
What's your budget size, though? Are you, because...
Well, we actually have
Okay.
two organizations. We have a parent and a subsidiary.
Okay.
the subsidiary, which is ODC Theater, which has its own 501c3 status. We share certain resources between both organizations, but they are independent.
Are they more than 1.5 million?
Well, the theater is not. But when we've gone out and looked at your RFPs, we've noticed that there are certain cases of either by district, by neighborhood, by, I believe the ones that we were eligible for last year were for the Mission District, but it was for us to put on a particular festival, or it was written in such a way where it was like, a organization within the mission can apply for these funds to put on a festival of this kind of art and discipline for this kind of community. And when I read that, I said, okay, well, this is definitely a grant for the Mission Cultural Center. This is not a grant for ODC, who has been a mission resident for over 40 years, because while we have we serve all kinds of folks. We have a school that has 27 disciplines, and our theater definitely goes into that budget size and has its own festival. But the language of the RFP per district, and it wasn't all districts, but it was in these areas. The ones that we could even go for it felt like this was written in such a way that it is really not open to us. And so SFAC funding felt like it was beyond us in that moment.
So you were reading the code, if you know what I mean? It was a supervisor add back.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was for somebody. Yeah. It was from that.
I mean, those are grants that happen in the city where a supervisor will write certain language and it's written for that organization to get.
Yeah,
and only once in a while does somebody else get it.
And it's literally happening literally right now at City Hall right now.
They're all going up.
That process. We just have a couple more minutes
But what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to circle it back to this.
So we only have, we got the 5-minute symbol.
Oh, we did
2 minutes ago. But go ahead. I know.
So this probably be our last.
Well, I guess to bring it back, the concept was to talk about Proposition E and its having passed. And as a person who was not in the region when that happened, I'd love to hear from anyone in the room who'd like to brag about the upside of this proposition and what it is good at or for. If anyone has anything good to say about it. I promise I wasn't in the area. I don't have any skin in this.
I would say my organization benefited as Safe House for the Arts in the Tenderloin. They were super generous to us.
So the intention of the bill was to access the hotel tax to a greater extent and extend it across the larger part of the community. Is that what I came to this session to learn more about this proposition and its intention, and also some of its failures is also part of every act that we live with in any municipal setting. But I just wanted to hear some excitement or any kind of did it get close to accomplishing what it was intended to do, what the voters voted on?
I would like one of you to talk about was it hijacked into some other part of the budget and it actually never did realize its original goals?
Was it hijacked into something else?
Yeah.
I don't think it was hijacked into something else. I think it got cratered, and that posed a whole new set of the problems in terms of the pandemic and the loss of hotel tax revenue. Right? It just happened at that moment, right? It lost momentum. And I do want to say there are a lot of great things happened. One, the community got together. We have a voice in City Hall around the arts that we never had before. Secondly, it broadened what support for the arts meant. Cultural districts got funded. Arts education came into the fold. Cultural service organizations came into the fold to be able to, get funding. And so I think that those are a lot of great things too.
Yeah, I think just the funding that did come in was really great. I think the action and the continuity of all of these, the coalition from Prop S to Prop E went from 40 organizations to 140 organizations. That was something that was huge. However, right after that passed, the Arts Alliance that led these meetings, that were laying out the path for people, stopped hosting these meetings right as the pandemic hit. And so all of that coordination, all of that togetherness, I feel like that singular voice that we had built together kind of dissipated and people went back to corners a little bit. And the other thing that I want to speak to as well is the Cultural Services Allocation Plan. When the Arts Impact Endowment was first imagined, the idea was that we would create grant programs that would be in place and have a chance to prove their worth for 5 years. However, when the Cultural Services Allocation Plan came up, it was in such a state of rushedness to get it done, according to the bureaucracy of the city, that they created a very vague plan that had these different buckets that Denise was speaking to. And I would say it's probably actually fortunate that during the pandemic, there was flexibility within those funds to adapt and to react to what was going on. However, from my understanding of what happened in meetings when it was created, it was the intention of the Arts Impact Endowment and the Cultural Services Allocation Plan said, we want to create these specific grant programs for 5 years so they have a chance to grow and see what the impact is in community. And then we revisit that in 5 years to see if we want to change that. I think what we've ended up with is the Cultural Services Allocation Plan being this overarching, we think these are the general buckets, and those programs change every year. And I think in a way that the Arts Commission can't anticipate what the community needs if we're shifting and changing every year. The last thing that I want to say is just around the next Cultural Services Allocation Plan is I want to advocate for an entire year of, what if we spent an entire year of Arts Impact Endowment funding training our community on facilitation and togetherness, giving people stipends to come together through democratic processes to talk about what we need on an artist level, on a culture bearer level, on an arts worker level. That it's not about executive directors and policymakers, but we're reaching out and doing the work and training artists to help us come up with the next Cultural Services Allocation Plan.
I kind of wanted to speak a little bit about what we do at SF Travel, because we are the tourism board and I'm the arts person. So I'm trying to make sure to try and figure out how to put as much money as possible into this fund. And I realize, we had 65% layoffs at the SF Travel Tourism Board during the pandemic. And I know everybody felt a ton of pain. But what we had the opportunity to do was start doing campaigns funded by hotels, which are not funded by grants for the arts, right? So the hotels started coming in and saying, okay, we'll take a chance on this, because they didn't have anything else going on to promote the city, right? And so we started to prove ourselves, and we've been doing campaigns and promoting and marketing the city through the arts. And my job is to also partly connect visitors with arts organizations and artists. And that's what I try to do. And please, if you want to reach out to me, my email is brendat@sftravel.com. And I'm always trying, and I love ODC so much, by the way, and many of the organizations that I've spoken today. So we're trying to make sure that that rises. And just to let you know, it is going up. We have APEC coming in the fall, November, which is a huge opportunity. But it is going up and up and up. 24, we're a little bit worried about because we've lost some conventions. So that's a concern. But 25, 26, 27, and I realize a whole year is brutal. But, we're really looking at some great opportunities in the future. And my colleagues are working really hard. So I am the person that promotes the arts through the tourism board. And I'd love to try and help any way I can.
Hey, thank you. All right, you guys. So thank you so much for participating in this really dense conversation. Everyone is going to be downstairs at the reception, so we'll all be here. So if you have questions for us, please feel free to find Vin.
No, but please walk away. Please walk away knowing that there's a lot more information out there. There'll be a resource page on ABBA's website for more information on Prop E. Please keep an eye out for things that happen. If you have questions about it, you can go directly to the Arts Commission. They're all wonderful people that are willing to listen to you and answer questions. Same thing with grants for the arts. And then you can also advocate to your supervisors. They will listen. You know, if you say, hey, we need more money inside Arts Commission's Cultural Equity Grants Program, they will have to listen to you.
Also, the CSAP process will be starting later this year. Probably, no, not later this year. Things take longer in the city. Like next year. And, you know, we want to encourage people to be there. And, you know, we'll reach out to you because we need to hear from you. And we're going to spend some time on this. Also, the strategic planning process is going to happen. They've already selected the consulting firm that will be working on the Arts Commission strategic plan. So, you know, Ralph is like going gangbusters. He has big plans, but you have to tell us what it is those plans should be.
Yeah. Thank you. And please join ABBA's mailing list. We don't send too many out, but you'll get information over there too. So thank you. See you all downstairs. And thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.